Hello, welcome to Telefónica BASECAMP. I'm Philippe Gröschel. I'm leading the public policy team of Telefónica Germany, and I'm happy to welcome you today here in BASECAMP. We have the cooperation with Young and Restless since 5 years. During the last 5 years, it was the usual way for us to meet here in BASECAMP, to have great events and nice networking afterwards with drinks. But then the Corona situation changed everything, and we had to do a few events just online as streaming. But I think all of us are a bit tired of Zoom meetings from 9 to 9 or whatever. And so we are very happy today that this is our first event which is completely hybrid. So on the one hand, you are here in the BASECAMP. The BASECAMP was a lost place during the last months, and we are very happy to now reactivate and this place and make it a vibrant, crowded place again, or let's say crowded with a few people. And on the other hand, we also have a lot of people who joined us via streaming, and also in the debate we will today have 2 guests who joined the debate via streaming, which is a completely new setup for us. And you are part of this experiment. Welcome. That's very that's will be very funny today. And I think we all of us have learned in the Corona situation the last months how fast digital transformation can accelerate when everybody needs digital tools. And during the last 5 years, we had a lot of debates in the Young and Restless events about digital transformation and what politics and industry can do to accelerate digitalization. But to be honest, in 5 weeks of lockdown, there happened much more digitalization than the last 5 years before. And this is, I think this is a momentum which politics as well as industry or companies should use to use this acceleration for a new open-minded transformation, because everybody now knows how important digitalization is for education, for companies, also for social life, for joining sport events, for having exchange with the grandparents or whatever. And this situation could be, for the digital policy and our topic and our debate, could be a positive impact. Of course, the whole Corona situation don't have too much positive impacts, but from a digital perspective, there are a lot of chances. And the digital agenda is also a huge topic within the German presidency of the European Council, which will be actually the topic which we will discuss today. And I'm very curious to see how this momentum will be also used in the European policy. And so I'm happy for having all of you here today. Thank you for joining our event. And now I will hand over to Patricia, who will moderate and host our event today. Welcome at Telefónica BASECAMP, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to our new episode of Young and Restless V-Talk. As you all know, Young and Restless is the monthly event for young professionals from the political scene, young entrepreneurs, startups, and of course young professionals from the creator of media scene. As my colleague told you, my name is Patricia Schwietzke, and I will accompany you through this evening. I would like to start right away with a thank you to BASECAMP on Air. They provide the technology that you, the audience online, can be here with us. And also a big thank you to BASECAMP Linn that we can meet here again in this, as my colleague said, experiment. As usual, you can use the hashtag #YRBerlin to comment on social media. And as usual, online you can ask questions. We will collect them and ask our audience at the end. And now let's get started right away. On July 1st, Germany took over the presidency of the Council of the European Union. Dealing with the effects of COVID-19 pandemic will be the major focus of the presidency. Among other things, digitalization should help here. That is why this topic has received a lot of attention. much to the delight of many. So today we will focus our attention to this topic, as well whether and how the presidential scope can be implemented in realpolitik. To get into topic, we will now hear Dr. Linn Selle, President of the European Movement Germany. She has been a board member of the European Movement since 2014 and was elected president in 2018. She's also the winner of the Women of Europe Award. Linn, ready when you are.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's still, I also already said to the other panelists that it's also my first real event since Corona. So past months, there's so many here, I was stuck in front of Zoom meetings and whatever else. So it's great seeing some faces when talking in real. So the presidency of the Council of Germany, first of all, we can say it already has been a success just some days into the presidency, because in the beginning of July, Germany, or the European member states, agreed on a multi-annual financial framework and a recovery fund due to the corona crisis of 1.8 trillion euro. So this is significant, it is ambitious, and it is a major success for Germany, but also for the European Union in general to cope with COVID, but also to have a European budget for the next 7 years. But of course, you shouldn't rest on your success. There are still many things to do in the past or in the next couple of months until the end of the year. So I would like to focus on 3 major challenges ahead for the German Council presidency. A bit not only focusing on digital issues, so a bit more general, but also, of course, talking on digital. So the first, I said, the first success is also the first challenge. It is agreeing on a multi-annual financial framework, a budget for the European Union, because although the heads of state and government agreed on such a deal, it is still not agreed because the European Parliament has to adopt it as well. And so currently there are negotiations on the framework of this budget. And from our position, this is really important because especially future-oriented issues in this budget are not enough reflected so far. So this goes for research and development, it goes for youth mobility, it also goes for digitalization issues. So we really do hope that in these negotiations the German presidency will be successful again in making more money available for those future-oriented programs. And also, of course, we have 2 major issues on the European agenda for this commission, the Commission von der Leyen, which is notably digitalization and the Green Deal. And this also has to be reflected in the final budgetary outcome. A second issue, not so much reflected or towards the digital sphere, is nevertheless a very important issue for us as an organization, for many organizations in Europe. It is the rule of law. You might know that currently in many or some EU member states there are problems with rule of law, with respecting the fundamental values of the European Union. And this also has to be resolved in the sphere of these budgetary negotiations, because there has to be a conditionality between how EU money is spent and respecting the rule of law. So this is something where we will hold the German government accountable, where we will look upon how they fare here. And thirdly, third but last, make Europe's democracy and economy fit for the digital age. I think it became very clear in the past months that it is very important, or that digitalization is key for the future of our continent, and to make Europe crisis-proof and future-proof, we need more digitalization. So there are 2 major debates we have at the moment. One is on digital sovereignty, where we talk a lot about questions of cybersecurity, of pooling our resources, of having a proper digital single market, just to drop some lines here, where we also see that the German presidency has the task of holding this debate and make progress on this debate. And the second issue in this making Europe's democracy fit for the digital age is, of course, also making civil society, making free speech ready for the digital age. We see many challenges ahead when it comes to hate speech, when it comes to racism online. And so there we will see a European Democracy Action Plan, which will be launched by the European Commission this fall. And there we also expect the German presidency to bring this debate forward and make concrete steps on how to tackle or how to enable freedom of speech online, and also making the European democracy basically fit for the digital age. So that would be some remarks for the beginning, and thanks.
Thank you, Linn. Yeah, please have a seat. I now want to welcome our next guest. It's Katharina Rieke. Katharina is head of Department Politics and Society at the Federal Association of Digital Economy. She is born in Germany, raised in Belgium, and she went to university in the Netherlands. She studied in Maastricht, a Bachelor of Law and Master International Laws. She worked for 6 years for the European Parliament as a political advisor, and in the end, head of office for German MEP. And since January 2019, she started at her association. Welcome, Katharina, and please have a seat as well. And now I'm also very delighted to welcome two guests online in Brussels who are live now. For off, Carlos Rodriguez Cocina, nice to have you. He's Director European Regulatory Affairs and Head of Brussels office at Telefónica. He holds the position leading its regulatory and public policy team in the interaction with the EU institutions since May 2013. Prior to this, he was manager of regulatory affairs of Telefónica International in the USA. And secondly, we welcome Sebastiano Toffaletti. He's Secretary General of Digital SME Alliance in Brussels. Nice to have you, Sebastiano. Sebastiano has been heading the Secretariat of the European Digital SME Alliance since 2008. He represents the organization in public debates and contributes to set EU and global policies on digital subjects. On the Digital SME Alliance, there are now about 20,000 companies in all member states. Nice to have you all here. It's really, really cool. Thank you. So, and due to our topic and that we have two guests in Brussels, I would really like directly go to the heart of Europe, to Brussels. The past few months have been challenging for all of us in the idea of a united Europe. So Carlos, taking the claim of the presidency, it's together for Europe's recovery. How do you see the current situation, and in your opinion, what are the most important challenges that must be overcome to actually strengthen our Europe again?
Well, thank you very much, Patricia, and first of all, thank you to my colleagues in Telefónica Germany and to young+restless for inviting me to this debate today. I would love to be with you in Berlin in one of those fancy chairs, but no, unfortunately I'm here in Brussels, but thanks to the wonders of technology, I guess that this will work well. And I like very much the opening remarks because actually it's an exciting moment to be in Brussels and working in the digital sector. It is true that Corona has made everybody realize about the importance of digitalization, but even before the crisis, already the Commission had put forward digitalization and the Green Deal as their main pillars and policy, let's say, critical policy elements for these 5 years. So I think it was relevant before Corona, and after Corona, everybody's realizing about the importance of connectivity and the importance of access to applications and services to develop our professional life and our social life and continue having our leisure activities and so on. So all this is good, and I think that provides a good context for the recovery as well, where this trend is supposed to be going even further. And it's true that many of the resources in the recovery fund will be allocated to green and to digital projects by the member states as a fundamental pillar for the economic recovery. But the element that I think is really relevant in this discussion is the one that was mentioned about digital sovereignty and technological sovereignty. I think that the realization that at this point in time we miss in Europe the technological capabilities that would allow us to compete head to head with the US and with China is a very relevant one. I think there is an intention really to develop a digital ecosystem in Europe that would also allow us to be less dependent on these critical elements of technology for the future. And in that debate, I think that the number of challenges is quite important. I would focus in three of them. One of them is connectivity, the other one is technology, and the third one is rules and values. On the connectivity side, there is an expectation that Europe will have fiber and 5G and will be a leader in those infrastructures in 2025. The perspective from the Commission is that every European should have a 100 megabit download connection at that time, and that 5G should be in every major urban area. The reality is that to get there, the amount of investment that is needed is really huge. The European Investment Bank has made a calculation of the investment that would be needed to get to those targets, and they think that there is a gap of 40 billion euros approximately per year that would need to be invested until 2025. So it's a huge challenge, and this means that the recovery fund per se or the multi-annual financial framework per se will not be able to make it. There will be a need for investment coming from the private sector, from players such as Telefónica, and that means that the right conditions have to be put in place for that investment to happen. And there are a lot of conversations in terms of how to shape the regulatory framework in a way that would be conducive to investment that we can develop further on. The second element is technology, and there you can see a lot of conversations around artificial intelligence, around blockchain, but also around cloud. And I think that precisely Gaia X, as one project that has been first promoted in Germany and now is acquiring more of a pan-European dimension, will be a very interesting one. It also relates to the debate on data and how to ensure the development of certain capabilities for Europe to enjoy and to benefit economically from data generated in Europe. And the third element would be rules and values. And that element is the one that needs to ensure a level playing field for European players versus other actors that are coming from outside Europe. And this one is really important because I think that Europe has an opportunity to develop a third way in digital. We have, on the one hand, the model in the US that is more transactional or mercantilistic, let's say, the model in China that is more based on state control, and Europe has an opportunity to really, through certain rules and values, put technology at the service of its citizens. So that's, let's say, the third challenge within this whole section of digital sovereignty. So, so I would say this is really where the game is in getting it right in those three critical components moving forward.
Thank you, Carlos, for this opinion and taking up the possibility that we have another guest from Brussels. Sebastiano, what is your opinion about the idea about Together for Europe's Recovery, especially maybe for what's the role from and by small, medium enterprises here?
Thank you, Patricia, and first of all, thank you very much also for the very kind invitation, and good evening to all the friends over there in Berlin. I must say, despite Carlos and myself being both in Brussels, I can hear everyone from the room over there in Berlin, but I cannot hear what Carlos has been saying. So I will, forgive me if I say things he has been saying already, or if I don't really make much reference to what he said, because I couldn't really hear anything. Anyhow, to your question, well, what is the role actually of SMEs here in this particular historic point of time? We heard from the introduction that the COVID crisis has indeed accelerated very much the digitalization of citizens, businesses, and also administrations. This has happened, I believe, pretty much all over Europe. And there are indeed positive aspects of it. Even though it was a crisis, we can definitely take advantage of certain things in that. Um, my organization, as you introduced it earlier, represents in Brussels about 20,000 companies in the IT sector, digital companies, small and medium-sized enterprises, which are a little bit the front runners of the digital revolution, of the industrial revolution, which is happening nowadays. We have been longly advocating for Europe's digital sovereignty because we have for a long time believed that if we do not have a strategy to put our own economic operators, our own companies, our own economy as a front runner of the digital revolution, Europe's wealth and even democracy in the long term is at risk. I don't say anything new, I believe, if I tell you that the role of big digital platforms is threatening the business of many companies. It's acquiring a lot of revenues, and it is really becoming, a threat for many other sectors. But at the same time, the same big platforms in the history we have seen they have been source of issues with regard to democracy. You spoke about hate speech, racism, etc. But there is also indeed influences that have happened through the social media on our own democracy, and unfortunately, this is already still happening. So we do believe that Europe must regain a level of digital sovereignty, must have a strategy to pursue a digital transformation. And we are very happy, by the way, that the Commission has announced as its main goals these twin transitions, so digital and environmental, and that the German presidency has really made the digital transformation as one of its key goals. I can only agree with you, with Dr. Selle, that the German presidency is perhaps already a success only after 2 months. What we have seen in the achievement of a deal for the multi-annual financial framework and the recovery fund is something that is only historic. And the fact that we are clearly linking the recovery fund with the achievement of certain objectives, including in particular the digitalization, is absolutely important because we are not only putting aside money, but we are telling national governments, you need to spend the money to go in that direction. And this is, in my opinion, what is much needed for the majority of the countries in Europe, is to have a direction, is to understand that we want to move as a bloc, as a political union, into certain directions, and we are putting aside money to do that. But we need to do it in a coordinated way and having a strategy and going all together in the same direction. Indeed, SMEs are, as we've always heard that, are one of the biggest strengths of Europe, right? We always many politicians speak about SMEs. Sometimes it is just lip service. Sometimes they are honest, they are genuine. Indeed, we think that our SMEs can also help us achieve a successful digitalization, because we have many SMEs in the IT sector which are very strong in the software industry, in technology, and they are transferring technologies, software, digital solutions, artificial intelligence, blockchain, you name it. There are so many new technologies, and they are transferring these technologies to other SMEs. We have so many sectors out there which are very traditional in Europe, and this is very good. They carry a lot of values of Europe, but we also need to help them to understand that we are in a transformation period, and they need to be able themselves to gain benefit from the digital technologies. So to generate value out of technologies, in particular software, but not only that. I don't want to speak much longer because I think I've been touching upon different issues. So I'm happy to anyway intervene later if you have more questions, Patricia.
Thank you, Sebastiano, for these words, and we can all see that there are a lot of topics which Corona made viewable. I would like to change from a more European level to a national level. Katharina, you're here from your association. We are now midterm of the presidency. You also read the program. Now you heard some words from the European level. So in your opinion, what might be, because our main topic today is also realpolitik, so what should change from the European level in order to make things viewable on a national level? What are problems that your companies coped with, or what do you see in your association?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Very nice to be here. Timing-wise, exactly, we're in the middle of the presidency, and I think that's also a little bit of a problem. I mean, all the countries that take on the presidency on the 1st of July, they have the summer recess, and then they don't have that much time anymore until December. But I think there are two or three topics that I see that the German presidency can really push forward in their time and maybe set a mark. That is definitely, as it was stated before already, the MFF, so the financial framework, that there is enough funding, that there is an agreement with the parliament. That is something that will help, of course, all European member states and also Germany. And I think that also from a European level it would be very helpful if you would have some more awareness raising. I think that would be a very nice thing also for the presidency, what they could do with events, with stakeholder roundtables, you know, just get in touch with people and have a bit more awareness, because I do feel that the European level is sometimes, yes, it is seen at national level, but not always in the most positive way. So I think it would be good to have a better communication in that regard. And as I can absolutely agree with all the elements that were said already, especially on digital sovereignty. I think that is something that the presidency can also set a mark on, especially with the e-privacy regulation, which is one dossier that they can actually still work on. When talking about other issues such as Digital Services Act, all of the platform regulation that is also coming up, they can also already drive the conversation, even though the proposals will come in the end of the year or maybe even next year. So there is a lot they can do, but there's little time, let's say. And yeah, maybe just to add as well that, of course, the presidency has pressure to do things, to push their agenda, but I think it's also important, or for us, for our association, for our members, to support their efforts and to see what we can give them best cases, give them an overview of what the industry needs, and yeah, have an exchange there. Okay. Yeah, cool.
Thank you. And that these are good points that bring me to you, Linn, again. As you said, or me, I feel like a European, and sometimes I miss the that Europe is seeing here. So I'm very curious to know, because you hear a lot of experts from the digital area, what initiatives does your organization and you especially do right now to support the German presidency and the goals? You mentioned some before, but I'm more curious about this.
Yeah, maybe to say some words in the beginning what the European Movement Germany is, because I'm not sure if it's that well known here. So our members are 255 in total and from all sides or spheres of the society. So our members are not individual persons, but associations, companies, NGOs, and from all sides. So the major trade unions are our members, such as business organizations, such as environmental NGOs, as well as consumer organizations, youth organizations. So very broad, and we try in our general work to broaden and deepen the pro-European consensus in Germany, also together with our European sister organizations in Europe as a whole. And so to that respect, we usually do briefings here in Berlin on council meetings, on major dossiers that are in the parliament, for example, and we use these tools currently also for the council presidency. And in that respect, Corona, all the tragedy around Corona at least had a little bit of upsides, as were mentioned in the beginning, that as we work only digital at the moment, it is much easier for us to have a European debate and to bring our European sister organizations in, also to give, for example, the Minister of State for Europe here in the Foreign Office, to give him also an idea what other European movements in the European Union and beyond, what they expect from the presidency, so as one precise example. And so we try to have a very broad debate with our members what they expect and relay this then to the ministries in charge, because all ministries, of course, have their own agenda for the council presidency. So we kind of, as a network, try to deepen this European sense here in Germany, but we also try to build an agenda. And so this agenda mostly comes from our members. And at the moment, I have to say, I said it in the beginning, the EU budget is of major importance for, I would say all, but at least, well, most of our members. There we really hope that those future-oriented policies, that, for example, for the businesses, it is innovation, it is research and development, for youth organizations, it is mobility of young people. So, and these are all the issues that were basically decreased in the final negotiations. So we really hope and lobby for the German government brokering a deal with the European Parliament that gives more money to those priorities. So that's, what we try to do.
Okay, thank you. That brings me, in my mind, I definitely had very fast the words you said in the beginning, that digitalization can help in order to bring our society together. And we all see that where demonstrations all over capitals in Europe against the restrictions for Corona, maybe this could be an example to Brussels again, to our experts. What could be done in order to, from the technical part or from the political part, what could be done for the future to change these mindsets for this, there's something going on, and I think you all know what I mean. So, Carlos, what is your idea about how could it technically help?
Change the mindsets. If you mean that perhaps there is not a perception at national level of what is being done in Brussels, I think that's always been a challenge. I think the German presidency is really pushing forward in a number of fronts. One that is, I think, really relevant is that more and more is not a matter only for digital ministers, but for the heads of state to talk about digitalization. We have a European Council coming up at the end of this month, and I think the expectation is that digital topics will be prominently featured in the declaration that will come out this meeting. So I think that's one way to really give political impetus to these processes, because it's not just a matter of money, it's not just a matter of people that are always working within this sector. It's a matter of the first level and the top level of our political representatives to imply themselves, to involve themselves, and to commit to these processes. And I think that this will help to get a better perception and closeness to the needs of the citizens at the member state level.
Okay, thank you. And another example that I had in mind is we all had seen that borders were closed, and we all had national corona warning apps. Sebastiano, what do you think should have happened in order to make why didn't we have in your opinion, a European warning app, and what might happen that I can sooner or later go to a neighboring country and help there fighting the pandemic? Are there ideas from SMEs, or how can they help in this issue?
It's an interesting question, Patricia. My reaction to that would be to tell you, indeed, as you say, the reaction by Europe, by all the countries in Europe, has been very fragmented, and there has been, restrictions to the borders and different ways to react to the crisis. Maybe even some countries have not helped other countries in the beginning. It took a little bit of time, etc. But I must say that these, at the end of the day, if you look at the performance that Europe has made vis-a-vis the coronavirus, despite all the slowness, all the need for political agreements, all the rhetorics and the fragmentation, whatever problem we had, overall, the data shows that the reaction in Europe has been way better than any other region in the world, in particular much better than in the US, despite Europe not being even a single country, but being just a political union. And that shows that democracy, when it's in its functioning democracy, might be slower in the first place. It's slower than let's say a dictatorship that might decide the day after what to do. A democracy will take more time. But in democracy, you have check and balances, and it will take longer, but you will get to the right conclusions in the end. So from this point of view, I think the coronavirus only shows that Europe, as a place of democracy, is doing right. Of course, it's difficult for citizens to accept and to understand that sometimes our political masters, our governments, EU, etc., will not act fast. So there is this creates a bit of distance. There's no doubt about it. But we also have to understand that in the long run, perhaps all these slowness, check and balances are necessary to bring us to take the right decisions. And this is a fact of life, unfortunately. Now, as to SMEs, because you asked the question, we have been trying from the very beginning of this crisis to demonstrate that the digital sector, and in particular the SMEs, were committed and were bringing forward Europe even in this crisis. We have seen the day after the first lockdown started that the big American companies announced that they were doing so much for the world, for the citizens, because the digital technologies could do this and that. And we said, okay, maybe each individual SME will not do as much as Google or Microsoft could do, right? But if we put together all the SMEs, all together we have a lot of knowledge, and we have capacity, and we have a lot of resources. Indeed, very fragmented, but we have a lot of resources, and if we can put that together, we can perhaps create something. And what we did, at the very beginning, perhaps even in March, we were one of the first organizations in Europe to launch such a campaign. We launched a campaign to collect companies that were doing, digital companies that were doing something to cope with the crisis. So we have asked all companies all over Europe to show what they were doing, and some of them were even giving their products for free. I know that in Germany, Beat Me, the German association, was doing something very similar. So we collected more than 300 companies which offered their solutions. Some of them were for free, some of them were not for free, but nevertheless they were all solutions which were helping citizens, businesses, public authorities to cope with the crisis. Cope with the crisis meaning that you, using digital technologies, you can do, you can work on a distance, you can do school on a distance, you can do medicine on a distance, and you can use technologies to do many more things. You can use artificial intelligence to understand the reactions, to predict where the disease is going. You can use technologies to help people in a very broad variety of ways. And we have put all that in an online database, collecting and showing each solution for each particular application. And we were very proud of that, because this shows the proudness of these companies, which really, in a way, demonstrate that Europe has a capacity to become more digitally sovereign, and that we have a very lively sector composed by SMEs, but not only SMEs, which is willing to lead and to take the rest of the economy ahead in the digital revolution.
Thank you, Sebastiano, and I would like to give to Linn. She raised her hand.
Yeah, I want to react to Sebastiano. I fully agree with you. It's so weird talking to a monitor here in this room, but nevertheless, Sebastiano, I would totally agree that I think Europe is the continent who so far did cope best with the corona epidemic. But when we look at it from a European angle, I think a major problem is at the same time that when it comes when there is this crisis situation, at the end of the day, there were only national reactions in the beginning. It ameliorated somewhat, but we shouldn't forget that there's still a cacophony of different travel warnings all over Europe for different regions on different grounds. So there is still a major problem that we talk about our single market, and this also relates to the digital single market. I think there's always the nice Sunday speeches of, oh well, we need the digital single market, but then there are concrete policy proposals from the European Commission, and at the end of the day, most of the time it is the member states saying, oh no, but this doesn't work, and I don't want this, but I want this. And so I'm curious how it will now work post-corona, when we see some new digital proposals on the digital single market, like the data strategy, for example, which is something that member states, and especially the German government, always called for. We need more integration, we need a digital single market. So now let's see how the debate goes, because most often I think, well, it's easy on Sunday speeches, but when it comes to implementation, then it's always like, we do it the way we do it because that's best. And this is, I think, what you basically saw with the Corona app, that although we have European legislation, the GDPR on data protection and privacy, it was still not possible to have an app which put those values into all the apps, make it interoperable. So it's, again, I think at the end of the day, the crisis also told us, I think, very sadly, that when it comes hard on hard, it is the member states or the national states that then do it their own way.
Yeah, if I may jump in. I fully agree, that's always the issue. Member states have different views sometimes. Sometimes it's also an issue of competences, whether the EU can actually act or not. But in the digital sphere, I have the feeling that we definitely have a momentum right now because everyone is using the digital tools. We have seen as well within our membership that a lot of companies had good ideas, they developed new ideas, they had different ways of working together. And we also saw that our members that were already very digitalized coped the best with the situation, and were able to also help the other. So I think that all the elements that are now coming up, and there is a lot of, especially also regulation proposed in the digital sphere, is very important to discuss, and it's now to have the right, or have the discussion to have the right setting for this. The data strategy, platform regulation, all of that is very important also for our members. But also at the same time, what we do, of course, we deal with that. And we look at this, and from our point of view, it needs to, further innovation, but at the same time set the right rules for fair competition in the market and have the right guidelines. And at the same time, we also feel that the companies, and we also have a lot of SMEs in our association, also have to do their part. So we're also working, for example, on corporate digital responsibility a lot, and also the connection to sustainability and digitalization, because of course it doesn't stop with platforms, social media, and digitalization as part of everyday life. So we're trying to set some maybe standards that could help everyone. So it's really a very interesting year for me, and there's a lot popping up all the time. It's also difficult to keep up, but yeah, it's definitely for the German presidency a great momentum in this autumn to deal with all these things and set a tone, even though if they cannot maybe finish all the talks.
And because you mentioned new innovations, I would like to ask or open the topic. Digitalization is also often criticized for using too many resources, and we still have this problem with climate change and climate protection, and there's also a topic in this presidency's program. So I would like to ask you, experts, how can we cope with this I don't know how to say it. We need resources for digitalization, and we should also save our planet. So what's, in your opinion, how can we cope with it?
Yeah, it's definitely an issue. It's definitely a problem, because especially new technology, when we talk about blockchain, for example, it's a lot of resources that go into that. But on the other side, I mean, digitalization can also help with reducing resources. So you need to find the right balance, which is not easy. But a lot of companies, also a lot of our companies, they already use, for example, fully regenerated energy for their service, for their tools. So there's a lot you can do, but definitely there is the need to think about it more deeply when when we're talking about blockchain, for example, and things that we want to use in the future.
Yeah. Thank you. Linn, what is your opinion about it from your perspective?
Well, I think you can't talk about the one thing without talking about the other nowadays, and I think this is clearly reflected both in the Commission work plan as well as in the agenda of the Council presidency. And I think what will be really interesting, because what we will have from the beginning of 2021, hopefully, fingers crossed, is the recovery instrument, 750 billion euro for the next 3 years. It's a major amount of money. And it is still in the debate whether a fixed percentage of this sum will be earmarked for projects which will be implemented by the member states. It's for the recovery from the coronavirus, but still it's a huge amount of money that could be used towards a green transition and towards a digital transition. So I think it would be very, very interesting to see if the European Parliament and the Council will be able to agree on such a proposal that, for example, 30 or 40% of the recovery fund is earmarked to green and digital projects, because this could both innovation in digital and green technology. So I think it's, well, maybe not two sides of the same coin, but should be, or is closely interlinked now.
And now that we have expert from a company, Carlos, in your opinion, what do you do practically for this topic?
So what we're trying to do is engage to the extent possible with the governments of the countries where we are present, mainly Germany and Spain within the EU. We are also in the UK, but of course in the process of living. And I think this is very important. Probably having thresholds for digital and for green would be ideal. And I think what is relevant as well is that when member states will be proposing or making their proposals of their projects, they will have to submit somehow their eligibility and their validity to the European Commission under this process of the European semester. And I think that is good. There were some voices saying that member states should have more freedom to decide how to spend the money. I think that is good that the Commission is providing guidance, that at the end there will be some sort of control that the resources are really channeled in the right way by the member states. We will be probably aspiring to have funds for connectivity deployment in rural areas because this would be very important for inclusion. One of the issues that we have, for instance, in Spain, is that we have a very successful rate of deployment of fiber to the home with more than 80% households covered. But there are still 20% of households, the most difficult ones to reach, that are not covered. And this is very expensive. So probably having some resources channeled in that way would be useful. And the same in Germany to increase coverage of 5G and being able to reach to all the citizens that need to use these connectivity resources. But we will also have aspirations probably for cloud. You know that telco operators have a lot of capabilities in the mobile networks to develop the mobile edge computing, to bring the computing resources closer to the users. So that is a component probably of the conversation on cloud that we would like to support with some of these funds. And also Telefónica is heavily involved in the audiovisual sector in Spain. So we are hopeful that this is one of the sectors that is suffering most with this crisis, that some support will be coming up to help the production and distribution of audiovisual content. Those are just some examples, but I think that the opportunities are there, and we have this collective effort to make them fruitful.
Thank you, Carlos. Due to the time that is running faster than expected, I would like to give you all the opportunity. We talked about Together for Europe's recovery, and maybe we can make a look or have a look after the recovery. So what are your wishes, or what are your demands for the future? So Katharina, if you have the freedom to have an
To wish for
imagination.
anything?
Exactly.
Well,
What is your wish for Europe?
If I could wish for, well, first of all, I mean, on a social level, let's say, I would of course wish for more community and that everyone sees the European spirit again. That would be great. But from a digital perspective in our association, I think for us it would be crucial to, on the one hand, have the whole concept of digital sovereignty clearer and have a goal where we can go to and deal with privacy issues, GDPR, and have this fixed in a way that it works for the people as well as for the companies. And that's one goal that we're definitely looking for. Secondly, I think it would be also very important looking at emerging tech, artificial intelligence, etc., to have maybe a bit more a risk-based attitude in Europe and Germany as well, and have a bit, not to be so afraid of failure anymore, and give a bit more freedom in that regard to develop. And also, yeah, as I started, I think awareness raising is a very important point for digitalization. In the whole area, so that's something, yeah, we would wish for. I think those are the main parts for us. Yeah.
Thank you. What about you, Linn? What would you wish for?
Yeah, despite the social, I can only applaud Katharina in that. I think. Well, I don't remember who said it, but this Brussels blame game. I think I would, in general, and this does not only hold for digitalization, is to wish for more normality in this multi-level, well, we're not a European Union, it's not a state, of course, but to have more reflection on what is going on at the European level, also not in the way that it's always Brussels when something goes wrong, and to have more, also more, have more importance or media attention to what is debated in Brussels or within the EU institutions, because what we often see is that some policy issues are debated for years in the EU institutions, and then it comes to, when it's a regulation, it has to be transposed into national law, and suddenly the Bundestag is saying, where does it come from? What is going on? I remember very well about the coming into force of the GDPR, and suddenly everybody was, where does it come from? And it was like the biggest lobby struggle for the past 5 years in Brussels, and Berlin just seemed, and it's not only Berlin, many national capitals seemed very detached from it. And this is not only a lobby issue, it's also a wider question of how media attention is developed. So if, for example, there would be more importance to parliamentary debates in the European Parliament, I think this would help have a better understanding on what is going on what level. And maybe a very precise wish, as we now head to the, slowly but surely, to the federal elections here in Germany next year. It would be great to have a debate about Europe there as well, to not only debate about our own national focus, which is of course important, but to have a broader perspective on how we want Europe to be in the next years with a new government, whatever government in place. So that would be my wish for 2021.
Thank you, Linn. Very, very cool wishes. Sebastiano, what about you? Shortly, what should change for the SMEs in the future?
Let me answer this way. I have a wish that Europe, Germany and the other countries, we become a truly circular economy and a true innovation economy. Why do I say this? Because I think the model we have right now, which is the model of continuous consumption, you buy products and after a month or a year or 2 years, you need to throw them away and buy new products continuously. You know, we had this dream that we could have our economies growing because we will continue buying new products and throw these products away and buying other products. We all understand that this is wrong, and this is not a sustainable future. So my hope is that now that we have the Commission has set these 2 goals, the twin transitions for us, including these environmental goals for the future, we can use the opportunity and we can use the digital technologies to fully become a circular economy. And let me tell you how the digital technologies can do that. If you think about it, every product or many of the products we are using nowadays are a combination of hardware and software. I'm just talking about cars, I'm not just talking about mobile phones or televisions, but nowadays every equipment basically has a combination of hardware and software. And what happens is that we are bound to these big manufacturers who have decided that we need to buy those products and then throw them away so that we can buy another one. And what if instead of doing that, we were able to open up those products, in particular the software? We would allow software on every product to be repaired or to be changed, innovated by independent companies. Think about it. If we only were able to do that, every single product could have a large amount of other independent companies around which could improve it, could repair it, could make its life longer, so a circular economy, could use it for other purposes, and could even just make it better, okay? This can happen in the automotive industry, but this can also happen in the building sector. Think about all our houses, how much energy they are consuming. If we only allow independent companies to step in and have the data from the energy providers to ameliorate the consumption, to reduce it, and so on. And this has to do with the digital sector, and this has to do with opening up the doors, opening up the monopolies, having real openness and interoperability where every company can innovate on top of what others have done. Maybe this is a dream, but this is the only way where we can become a circular economy and a sustainable economy, where because we will keep innovating, and therefore we will become, we will have growth, economic growth, jobs, and so on. This is the recipe, in my opinion, for a prosperous future of Europe. And this is what I wish that we are going towards.
Thank you, Sebastiano. And now the closing words, I think, Carlos, make shortly, what's your wish? Just to have the end of this.
Just very shortly, I think that if we are serious about this concept of digital sovereignty, we have to rely on the players that we have currently in Europe. And what do I mean by this? If you take a look at the technology sector, we don't have big platforms such as Google, Facebook, Amazon, or others. We still have equipment manufacturers such as Nokia and Ericsson. We have some strong telco operators, but that have been under a lot of regulatory pressure for many years now. So if we are serious, let's say, about building our own digital ecosystem in Europe and fostering our own capabilities, we cannot forget about the players that we have on the ground right now, and that can be the perfect platform to develop that ecosystem. So I think more reliance and more push for our existing capabilities to build the future on top of them is my wish for the future.
Thank you, Carlos. I think all of your ideas sound wonderful for a united Europe again, which we have. So I think let's make it happen. Let's work together to make it happen. I would like to thank you as our experts today. All questions would come online and hear from the audience. We will collect them and ask our experts at the end. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time, especially Linn, Carlos, Sebastiano, and Katharina. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for your attention online and here at the BASECAMP Berlin. And I really hope to see you again, which is the next time on 22nd of September. Again as a hybrid event. We will be here and online, as you all know. We will present the annual public affairs study, and my colleague Diana will be the host of this evening. So thank you, have a good night, have a good evening, and hope you see you next time.